You know, I have to say this update was really looking up for me because they added 2 brand new features such as the Raider and the Apache, and then second off, they also added lock-on jamming. However, I do have to say that one of the vehicles was handled fantastically, but the second one, it wasn't done the best way. Let me just say this. The EA-18 Growler. Today I'll be checking it out, I'll be damage testing it, but before we even begin that, I'm just gonna say it, this vehicle is a pretty big disappointment and it really does not feature in the ways most of the people would probably want it to go. So anyway, today I'll be covering its strengths and weaknesses, and I'm gonna say it does have a lot more weaknesses than strengths. In fact, it only really has 1 to 2 strengths at the maximum. Anyway, let's move into the damage test. So before we begin, I quickly want to say that this vehicle is going to be a max level, so I want to just make sure that everyone understands this, and I'm going to be testing it against max level vehicles as well. So 1 missile against the F-35 will be exactly 30% of damage. Not too much, and it only does have 2 air missiles, meaning that it's maximum going to be able to chip away like 40% from the F-35, which isn't too much, to be totally real with you. And then if we take a look at another meta vehicle like the F-22 Raptor, then pretty much we have the same case scenario. This vehicle does not get the job done in terms of air-to-air, because first of all, it doesn't have enough missiles, and the damage is still probably not the greatest. And I also want to add that if you are able to play with the flares as a plane, most of the time, you're going to be able to at least dodge 1 missile with that. So really, you're only going to be taking around 30% in every single fight from the Growler. Now moving on to the Super Hind, which once again is gonna be a little bit of a disappointment. It only does 38% per shot, meaning that an average meta vehicle, this thing will not be able to kill even if they do not deploy their flares, and maybe it will be able to kill an average helicopter or just leave it on very low amount of health, but the fact is it only does have 2 missiles once again, and it just simply does not get the job done. Now moving on to its tank capabilities, and once again this is gonna be a disappointment. 2 of its missiles are not gonna be able to do the best damage once again. They're gonna leave the Abrams X at around 50% or so, but again, APS exists, meaning that you're never going to be able to hit any of these missiles. So now after we overall understand the statistics and how good this thing is in the meta, aka it's pretty useless, it really doesn't really do anything. Some people thought it was going to be good for ships, but it also does not get the job done against the Zumwalt with all of its 4 missiles. It only really does around 25% of it at max level, which is once again quite bad. The only advantages that this vehicle actually has is that it's basically going to be a middle finger to the Patriot and Panzer spammers, because it will be able to kill them without them being able to lock onto it. Other than this, it really does not have any more advantages. Now this really brings me back to its last point, the lock-on jamming. Will this be able to be a saving grace of this vehicle? Unfortunately, I have to say it to you, it just simply does not get the job done. The way in which the lock-on jamming works is that no one will be able to lock onto you with missiles, and it pretty much works like an infinite stealth. It does absolutely nothing other than this, and it only does have the power of being able to shoot some missiles, which are pretty much both gonna be useless just because of the simple modern counters that the vehicles now have in War Tycoon. And my main concern with this vehicle is that it could have been designed in a much better way, and what I mean by this is that they could have simply actually just made it a support vehicle and allow you to actually jam missiles which are coming at your teammates from your same faction or something. This vehicle had a lot of potential, but unfortunately expectations versus reality is a pretty big thing, and this vehicle just ended up not delivering and not really getting the job done. I will reach out to developers to see if we can maybe make this vehicle a lot better and actually allow it to work in a teamwork kind of way, and actually to pair it with your faction members in order to actually defend them. I think this vehicle would work really well as support, but as of now, as a single player vehicle, it really is pretty useless, and I would probably be ranking it as like a D tier in terms of this meta. Anyway, for the time being, that's pretty much everything I have for you guys in today's video. However, there were more positive things that came out in this update, and those were some heavy balance changes, which I'll be covering in 2 hours, so make sure to stay notified for that video.